This morning, President Putin announced a special military operation in Donbass.
Exactly 500 days ago, early on the morning of February the 24th, 2022, Putin announced the start of a war against Ukraine. The bet was made on a blitzkrieg. It was planned to take Kyiv and overthrow the legitimate government. However, the Ukrainian army managed to repel the attack and the Russian advance stalled. After a month of fierce resistance for which the Russian invaders were not ready, it became clear that Ukraine would stand.
We practically seized the existence of the new Russian Empire on the rise, Putin's non-democratic empire, and now no one has any doubts that the possibility of the revival of any empire in modern times in the 21st century has been destroyed precisely thanks to the strengths of the Ukrainian people, the strengths of the Ukrainian defense forces.
Kyiv has not been taken in 3 days. The Russian army is hungry, demoralized, fragmented, under constant heavy fire from the armed forces of Ukraine and under the threat of encirclement. Amid this, the only correct decision was made in the Kremlin to withdraw troops from the Kyiv, Chernihiv and Sumy regions. The Ukrainian armed forces were advancing on the heels of the fleeing Russians. In the liberated settlements, Ukrainian flags were raised again.
It was the first victory of the Ukrainian army, a very significant victory which showed that the armed forces of Ukraine are capable of defeating their enemy and are able to win victories over it, of a very important and very significant quality. Another very important success was also the liberation of Snake Island. By driving out the Russian troops from there, we actually rubbed out any threat of landing in Odessa.
In the autumn of 2022, Ukrainian forces began to probe the Russian defenses in the Kherson and Kharkiv directions. The latter turned out to be weak and the front collapsed like a house of cards. The armed forces of Ukraine liberated Izyum, Kupiansk and other settlements of the region in a few days in September, as well as Svetohiysk and Liman of the Donetsk region. The next major operation was the deoccupation of the right bank of the Kherson region in November. Ukrainian forces had been hitting the logistic routes of the Russian invaders through the Dnipro River for several months. As a result, it became problematic to supply the army, so the Russians retreated to the right bank.
It is proposed to take up defensive positions along the left bank of the Dnipro River.
The goal of the spring-summer Ukrainian counteroffensive in 2023 is the liberation of the south of Ukraine. So in June, the armed forces of Ukraine deoccupied more than 100 square kilometers of Ukrainian land. The Russian offensive is bursting at the seams around Bakhmut either, which the Russian army has been storming since August 2022. It is the bloodiest battle since the beginning of the Russian war against Ukraine and the bloodiest infantry battle since World War II. The city may soon get in the operational encirclement of the Ukrainian military, who occupy the dominant heights near Klishchiivka.
If the enemy was not ready for our offensive in the Kharkiv region, then in the Zaporizhia region it was prepared quite substantially. They dug trenches, prepared defensive structures, set up minefields, and this whole structure has to be overcome. The operation is quite difficult. It is aggravated by the fact that we do not have an advantage in the air and are forced to replace aviation actions with artillery actions, which in general slows down our progress. However, this progress is underway.
Ukraine's successes on the battlefield have become a favorable condition for the formation of an anti-Russian coalition. Kyiv has enlisted long-term financial and military support from the Western capitals. The list of provided equipment and types of weapons was gradually expanded. Almost all the red lines were rubbed out. The armed forces of Ukraine received HIMARS MLRS, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, Leopard and Abrams tanks, Patriot systems and Storm Shadow long-range missiles. The issue of transferring F-16 fighter jets to the Air Force has already been actually resolved. Ukrainian pilots just have to undergo the training on them.
We understand that Ukraine has turned from a small Soviet army into an army in terms of technical equipment, is now much closer to our partners in the North Atlantic Treaty, in NATO. And we understand that this is a modern weapon. At the same time, when Ukraine takes a step forward with every day of the war in terms of technology and weapons, the Russians are taking a step back. The Russians are now forced to fight with the weapons of the middle of the 20th century.
After 500 days of the war, according to the statements of the Ukrainian General Staff, more than 230,000 Russian soldiers were killed for the imperial ambitions of the Kremlin master. According to Bloomberg analyst, Ukraine has overtaken Russia in terms of the number of available battle tanks. It is approaching parity in artillery and air defense. It is inferior to Russia, perhaps in the air forces only, but this is for now because the landmark is the victory and the borders of 1991. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Vasil Panasiuk, UATV News.